Today, our energy system alone is responsible for 75% of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to decarbonize Europe's energy mix. And the good news is we are on track to achieve this. Every country has a responsibility, and the time to act is now.
Being less dependent on fossil fuels is an increasingly urgent necessity. The alternative is the depletion of our planet's resources and therefore a very direct and concrete threat, not so much to the life of the Earth, but to our existence as a human species. And we must do it quickly, because our stay on this wonderful blue planet is at risk. And the signs are becoming more and more frequent. There is a country in Europe that is the ideal place to produce clean and truly renewable energy, thanks to two elements: wind power and sunlight. With its 7,500 kilometers of coastline and great exposure to the sun's rays, exceeding 2,000 hours per year in the center-south, Italy has all the potential to become a European hub for renewable energy production and distribution. This is why the most advanced companies determined to achieve secure energy sustainability are investing and committing themselves to the construction of innovative wind and solar power plants in the land of the sun.
Raggiungere i risultati sperati non è un obiettivo che riguarda solo la nostra azienda, ma significa essere parte di un progetto ancora più ampio e importante che riguarda l'intero Paese. Prevediamo investimenti importanti soprattutto sulle rinnovabili, in linea con quelli che sono gli obiettivi di gruppo.
Let's try to understand what it actually means to build these plants, how much expertise and commitment is needed to produce the energy of the future safely and in defense of our planet. We are in Mazara del Vallo, at the harbour where the ship transporting some of the components that will make up a wind turbine has just arrived. Right now, the nacelles, which are the beating heart of the whole plant, are being unloaded. The technicians carefully prepare the tools required to extract them from the ship's hold and load them onto the vehicles that will take them to the Alini site. Unloading is a particularly critical operation. Any shock could compromise the delicate mechanism of the equipment. Each of these nacelles houses the drive shaft and the gearbox, which together with the generator capture the force of the wind and convert it into electrical energy. For this reason, the operations must be carried out with great care and precision. And all parts must be safely secured on the vehicles that will take them to the plant construction site. Everything is ready. The first components have been loaded and others are waiting on the docks in the harbour. The journey to Alini can begin. Meanwhile, at the site, technicians are completing the construction of the foundations that will house the wind turbines. On the construction site, workers are working hard to make the units that will have to bear all the weight and thrust of the turbine. These are very powerful concrete plinths, designed to firmly support a 115-meter tower and tolerate the high stress in the turbine blades while wind power is transformed into electricity. Thus, a round structure with a diameter of 18 meters and a height of almost 4 meters is built. Cement is poured into this circular, cage-like framework of steel rods. It takes 90.5 tons of steel and as much as 560 cubic meters of concrete for each foundation. The central unit, where the tower is inserted, is called the anchor cage, where the cables connecting the turbine to the underground conduits run to connect the plant to the national power grid. . ' Meanwhile, the journey of the components continues. It takes at least 20 people to safely organize the transport of the blades for a wind farm, drivers, engineers, technicians, and even the police.
È super complicato portare i componenti di una turbina eolica in situ. Immaginate che una pala eolica, nello specifico quelle di Elimi, sono lunghe 65 metri, quindi trasportare un componente di queste dimensioni attraverso una cittadina per uscire da un porto e raggiungere un sito come questo crea tante difficoltà.
Before departure, we check the cargo securing for safe transport, the itinerary, the weather conditions, and the functional status of the vehicle.
Io sono pronto, possiamo partire, K.
Finally, we set off, with the roar of the engines merging with the sounds of a Sicilian night. Almost always, in fact, the transport of wind turbine components takes place at night to avoid as much disruption to normal road traffic as possible. A 65-meter load makes even the simplest maneuvers, such as turning into a road, complex. Then all the characteristics of the route must be considered. If you need to cross a bridge, you must be sure that it has the capacity to support an extraordinary weight. And sometimes, to facilitate the maneuvers of HGVs, it's necessary to temporarily remove possible obstacles, such as road signs, signboards, and even power lines from the route. In the same way, the gradients of climbs and the presence of speed bumps or twists in the roads along the route must be checked in advance. At Elimi, meanwhile, the foundations of the turbine made of reinforced concrete are being completed. It is a delicate operation because the filling must be done quickly and without any break, not to create air gaps that could lead to deterioration and friability of the construction in a short time. Even for the filling of the foundations, the activity is scheduled at night, both to ensure continuity, which lasts several hours, and because the heat of the sun could adversely affect the final solidification. Calculations and planning, therefore, must be very precise. Being able to complete all the foundations in the scheduled manner and timing requires a major coordination effort for the whole team. Blades, pylons and nacelles are continuing their journey. Every aspect of the route must be assessed very carefully and certain conditions even more accurately because pitfalls are always just around the corner. Engine vibrations and bumps in the road can loosen the devices that secure the load. Therefore, at regular predetermined intervals, it's necessary to stop and check that everything is in order and, if the case, take proper actions. At last, the Elimi site is in sight. We are reunited with the other transporters, and from tomorrow, weather permitting, we can start assembling the turbine. It is morning, and the work can begin. The construction of a wind turbine is not the easiest task, especially in a maxi plant like this. All the fundamental components of the equipment have to come together. The large blades, each 65 meters long, and the nacelle, which must be brought up to a height of 115 meters, the length of the Maradona Stadium in Naples, including the athletics track, just to be clear. To do this, a crane jib must be lifted to take the pylon pieces, the nacelle, and the blades up to that height. This is a crane jib capable of hoisting 500 tons, which must exceed the height of the turbine by at least 10 meters. In our case, therefore, it reaches 125 meters. But when it comes to moving such mammoth structures, weather conditions matter a great deal. All it takes is for gusts of wind to come up and everything must stop, and danger is always lurking. But for those who carry out these jobs, safety always comes first. The rules to be followed are explained and reiterated often, especially on the eve of very complex operations.
Poi ovviamente se c'è troppo vento non ci salgo.
With very precise rules for everyone to follow.
È una procedura a cartellini come nel calcio, nello sport. La prima volta c'è una ammonizione verbale, la seconda volta c'è una ammonizione scritta, alla terza infrazione si viene espulsi dal cantiere, o per un giorno o anche in modo permanente, a seconda della gravità dell'infrazione. Non andare mai sotto un carico sospeso, non toccarlo mai con le mani, ma guidarlo sempre con delle funi o con dei bastoni. Solamente quando il carico si trova a poca distanza da terra ci possiamo avvicinare e guidarlo.
La sicurezza in un cantiere come l'IMI abbiamo posta la massima attenzione su questo tema. Tutti i lavoratori e tutti i visitatori che entrano in cantiere hanno una safety induction da parte del nostro personale su quelli che sono i rischi in cantiere, su quelli che sono i dispositivi che occorre indossare durante la visita o durante le lavorazioni in cantiere.
In a moment, we will show you the most delicate step in the construction of a wind farm, which could undo the work of months.
Quello è un momento proprio di alto rischio.
And then, how the latest generation of solar power plants, in addition to producing clean energy, can help the agri-food development of the areas where they are built.
Siamo ENGIE, quelli che producono energia da fonti rinnovabili e la portano a casa tua. Quelli che, per la tua azienda, danno forma a soluzioni per la decarbonizzazione e che fanno sì che gli edifici, i servizi pubblici e le nostre città siano sempre più efficienti e rispettosi dell'ambiente. Noi di ENGIE mettiamo tutta la nostra energia per migliorare la tua. ENGIE.
We told you about the arrival in the ports of Mazara del Vallo and Trapani of the various components that will make up the wind turbines of the ENGIE wind farm in Italy, Sicily, and about the complex and adventurous operations to transport such delicate and mammoth components to the site where the wind farm will be built. The big day has finally arrived. The blades, perfectly aligned, have reached the collection point without being damaged. Now 33 blades are put into place in sets of 3 to make up the 11 towers. But how is a wind turbine assembled and how does it work? A wind turbine consists of a steel tower on top of which a nacelle is hoisted, containing all the components needed to transform wind power into electricity. At one end of the nacelle, there is a hub to which the 3 blades are attached, which, moved by the wind, will transmit mechanical energy to the motor inside the nacelle, and from this to the generator that will produce electricity. This process takes place in a wind force range of between 3 and 25 meters per second. If the wind blows below 3 meters per second, it cannot drive the turbine blades. If, on the other hand, it blows above 25 meters per second, the system blocks the blades, putting the plant in a safe position. It is windy at the Elimi site, and it would be strange otherwise. It's indeed the reason why it was decided to build the plant here. But fortunately, now the intensity of the wind is not such as to compromise construction operations.
Ci sono dei rischi e questi rischi sono dovuti a diversi fattori, variabili in gioco. Una di queste è dovuta al fatto che stiamo sollevando pesi di una notevole importanza, parliamo di decine di tonnellate, e la seconda è dovuta al fatto che le condizioni meteo possono influenzare i sollevamenti.
Once the nacelle is in place, the main shaft and the speed multiplier are hoisted, fundamental components that together with the generator make it possible to transform wind energy into electricity. This is the mechanism of the turbine, and as such, it is very complex and delicate and must not be subjected to shocks during the hoisting operation. On top of the towers, there are always at least 2 technicians, a minimum number to ensure that should one of them be sick, the other can help him. But here comes the most important moment. The three blades, which together with the hub form the rotor, are ready to be hoisted. With great care and attention, the first one is hooked up. It is a moment of great tension. Everyone knows that this is the final stage of months of work, of what is seen and what is not seen. The kilometers of underground cables winding from the base of each tower to the substation connect each turbine to the national power system. And everyone knows that even the smallest setback at this moment, a sudden gust of wind, a lapse of attention, a too hasty gesture could thwart the entire operation. This is it. The blade has reached the top of the tower and must be connected to the hub, an operation that requires millimetric precision.
Quello è un momento proprio di alto rischio, poiché richiede precisione e coordinamento tra le persone che stanno gestendo l'installazione.
Once fixed, the first blade is set upright so that the next one can be inserted. It is neither an easy job nor a quick one. The task takes several hours to be completed, and if the wind picks up, it may have to be spread over several days. Here is the turbine in all its majesty. The diameter is 136 meters, just like the length of the Altare della Patria that dominates Piazza Venezia in Rome. Wind has been an exploitable source of energy since ancient times, in fact. Since the dawn of civilization, it has been used to move boats on water, to produce flour with mills, and even to entertain children and fly kites. The sun has also always been considered a very powerful element. Indeed, there is no primitive culture that does not count a sun god among its most important deities. But using its energy has always been a dream. Archimedes succeeded in concentrating its rays and turning them into a weapon. But not much more until a technology capable of capturing the sun's energy and transforming it into electricity was built. After finding the site where to build the solar farm, the first thing to do is to clear the ground, to identify and, if necessary, remove items that could interfere with the plant. Pipes, old electrical connections, or even potentially dangerous remnants of war. Let's try to understand how sunlight leads to the creation of electric current. The rays strike the surface, and this irradiation sets the electrons inside the circuits in the panel in motion, generating a direct current, just like that contained in batteries. From there, it then passes into devices, the inverters, which transform it into alternating current, the form of electricity that travels in distribution systems. Next, the current passes through transformers that raise its voltage, finally arriving via underground cable ducts at a substation, where it is further raised to high voltage with other transformers and travels by cable to our homes. Work starts with preparing the ground to place the poles that will be used to support the photovoltaic panels. On this 115-hectare site, 122,000 photovoltaic panels will be installed, and the ones that will be used here are of a new generation with an important innovation.
Il progetto di Mazara del Vallo è un'innovazione perché permette di coniugare la produzione agricola e la produzione di energia elettrica da fonti rinnovabili. I pannelli che usiamo su questo impianto sono innovativi perché usano la fascia sopra per produrre energia elettrica, ma anche la fascia dietro. Il sole si rifletta sul suolo, poi ritornando sulla fascia indietro produce anche energia. Questo fa parte delle innovazioni che sono state fatte negli ultimi anni e lo usiamo su questo impianto.
It is precisely this spacing that will make it possible to cultivate typical local crops such as almond, olive and lavender trees between one row of panels and the next. But the precision of the measurements also serves to make the panels move according to the orientation of the sun, without losing a single ray. The Agrivoltaic plant in Mazara del Vallo is the largest built in Italy. The 122,000 panels arrived at their destination after undergoing a test in Rotterdam, Holland, to check the technical requirements and ensure that they have the best possible performance. everything is ready and we can start installing the panels of the planted structure. Once electrified, the system is synchronized with the sun tracking system. For all panels, it is time to connect to the national grid. The sun's rays strike the photovoltaic cells and energy production begins. The 115-hectare Agrivoltaic site has a twin park in Paternò, in the province of Catania. Together, the two plants will avoid the emission of tons of CO2, with a positive impact on air quality comparable to that of planting 3 million trees. The real hub of the electricity grid is the substation, where the energy that arrives from the plants flows, is raised in voltage, and then fed into the national grid, thus becoming available for the needs of end users.
E ovviamente il ruolo fondamentale di queste grandi stazioni e di infrastrutture di viaggio permette di aumentare la capacità di far viaggiare l'energia da dove è prodotta a dove serve e nel momento in cui serve, a differenza del momento in cui viene prodotta.
The other major innovation of the ENGIE plant in Mazzara del Vallo is the possibility of not interrupting cultivation. The fact that photovoltaics prevented cultivation of the land where it was placed was always one of the strongest objections to the development of new plants. Is it possible to safeguard agriculture?
Funziona, va comunque organizzato con una certa attenzione, perché le attività agricole hanno una certa interferenza con i lavori legati alla produzione di energia elettrica, quindi bisogna essere capaci di saperli integrare queste due attività.
And this is where experts like Antonio Zichitella, a curious, resourceful nurseryman who loves the environment, come in.
Questa cava veniva sfruttata per l'estrazione del tufo, che è un elemento principale dell'edilizia marsalese.
With passion and talent, he managed to transform an abandoned tuff quarry into a real Babylonian garden. This experience made him the ideal person to understand how to make the most of the agricultural environment of an agrivoltaic park.
Andare a coltivare sotto i pannelli fotovoltaici è una cosa molto positiva, che si forma un microclima che agevola la produzione.
Man has always sought to harness the forces of nature to produce energy or resources for his livelihood. The wind, the water, the sun, from salt production to irrigation fields, from windmills to dams. But now is the time for energy production to not only exploit our planet, but also help protect it. The commitment and construction of clean energy plants are a necessity to combat the shortage of resources that threatens our survival in the not-too-distant future. Moreover, they are a great opportunity to relaunch territories like Sicily, which could really become important vanguards towards a better, more sustainable world, and an important source of income and development for those who live there, an example for all.
La Sicilia è una terra dove la coltivazione fa parte della tradizione, perché usiamo il suolo, però usiamo anche il sole come i siciliani l'hanno fatto da secoli, sfruttando il sole per produrre il sale. È stata una sfida molto importante. Questi progetti per me rappresentano il futuro del nostro pianeta e quindi di tutti noi.